Welcome to this deep dive. And we are going to be exploring what happens when, well, those who may have practiced prejudice become the targets of it.
Ooh,
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, right?
yeah.
We're taking a close look at a piece called The Irony of Prejudice, Upper Castes Abroad Facing Racism While Practicing Casteism at Home.
Right.
But before we jump in, I think maybe a quick recap of the caste system for anyone who maybe needs a refresher.
Sure.
It's been part of Indian society for centuries. It's this hierarchical structure, these levels determined by birth.
Mm.
And, it affects your occupation, where you stand in society, even who you're allowed to marry.
It's pretty pervasive.
Yeah. And officially it's been abolished, thankfully. But the legacy, it's still there, unfortunately. Still casts a pretty long shadow.
It does.
So this irony, it's like this people who benefited from or were complicit in that caste system sometimes find themselves facing racism when they move abroad.
It is, like you said, fascinating. You're navigating a system where you might have held a certain amount of privilege,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you encounter prejudice in a new environment,
Hmm.
just based on, your ethnicity or the color of your skin.
Right. Yeah.
How would you even process that?
It's like the tables have turned in a way.
Yeah.
And now you're hitting those glass ceilings in your profession, maybe struggling to break into certain social circles and encountering microaggressions, those subtle digs
Yeah,
that chip away at your sense of belonging.
absolutely. And in these types of moments, I always come back to that quote by Maya Angelou. She said, "Prejudice is a burden that confuses the past, threatens the future, and renders the present inaccessible." So you can see how facing racism abroad, it could be that trigger for some introspection to
Mm.
reflect on your own prejudices.
Right. That's the ideal scenario, right? That this would happen. Sadly, it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see this disconnect, this irony where someone is outraged by the racism they face when they're abroad, yet they're totally oblivious to the casteism they might be upholding back home or even within the Indian diaspora.
Oh, absolutely. Cognitive dissonance. It's that disconnect. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Where you hold two, conflicting beliefs or you're engaging in these actions that totally contradict each other.
Right, right.
And this article, it really kind of hits this point home with these, sharp analogies.
Yeah.
One that stood out to me, complaining about racism while practicing casteism is like criticizing the chef's salad while tossing your own with rotten ingredients.
Okay, yeah, that's a powerful image. Calling out flaws in someone else's creation while ignoring your own, less than fresh ingredients.
Right.
There's another quote from the article that stuck with me. Carrying the baggage of caste abroad only adds weight to the plane but doesn't uplift your mind.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one. It's like carrying those biases, they don't serve you.
No, they don't.
And this irony, it's not just a theoretical concept, it plays out in real-life situations.
Yeah.
Like, think about it going to, these exclusive gatherings within the Indian community abroad, arranged along caste lines.
Oh, wow.
Or, how caste preferences continue to influence matrimonial choices.
Even in these multicultural settings.
Yeah, exactly. And even in workplaces, you see subtle casteism where people favor interactions with colleagues from India, but only if they're upper caste.
So you're exporting a social hierarchy in a way. You're taking that baggage with you, just like the quote said. And it brings up a really important question.
Mm.
What are the dangers of perpetuating casteism, both in India and abroad? How can you advocate for equality and fight against racism when you're participating in a system that's inherently discriminatory?
Right.
It undermines your moral authority, and it creates this dissonance in your own beliefs.
It hinders social progress for everyone.
That-
And it creates this ripple effect, a cycle of prejudice. B.R. Ambedkar, he was a champion of social justice in India. He said, caste is a state of mind. It is a disease of the mind.
Wow.
It gets to the core of the issue.
It really does. It shows how this is more than just outward actions.
Yeah.
It's about confronting those beliefs and biases deep down.
Right.
It's about recognizing that potential for hypocrisy within ourselves. And that's something we're going to explore further in this deep dive, so stay with us.
So we've been talking about the dangers,
Yeah.
right, of perpetuating casteism.
Yeah.
But the article goes beyond just highlighting the problem, thankfully.
Yeah, it does.
It also emphasizes the importance of self-reflection and change, right?
Right.
Which is key.
Yeah. It all starts with awareness,
Oh.
You can't really challenge something you don't understand.
Right.
So, the first step is really educating yourself about the caste system, its history, how it impacts people. How much do you really know about it beyond the basic definition? That's a great point. It's so easy to just, skim the surface
Yeah.
of these complex issues.
Yeah.
But really understanding those nuances, how deep it runs, that's where change happens.
Exactly. And thankfully, there are so many resources out there.
Yeah.
Books, articles, documentaries, online courses even.
Oh, yeah.
They give you a deeper understanding. It's about going beyond the surface.
I think also education isn't a one-time thing.
Oh, for sure.
It's constant, right? We should always be open to learning more and challenging our own assumptions.
Oh, absolutely. And that leads to the next step, introspection. This is where the work begins, taking a look at your own beliefs,
Yeah.
behaviors. Do you have any unconscious biases? Do you
Right.
treat everyone with respect, no matter their background?
And those are tough questions to ask yourself, right?
Yeah.
I think it's natural to kind of shy away from those shadows.
It's not easy, but it's so essential. Remember that quote,
Yeah.
"The world is a mirror. It reflects back what you are."
Yeah.
If you want to see a more just and compassionate world,
Yeah.
we have to start by looking at ourselves.
Powerful reminder. And it connects with another takeaway from the article, this idea of embracing inclusivity. And I think, it goes beyond just accepting diversity, right?
Yeah,
It's about actively seeking out different perspective,
for sure.
building relationships, with people from different backgrounds. It's about creating spaces where everyone feels welcome.
Yeah, I think that's where real change happens, On that personal level,
Right.
could be as simple as inviting someone from a different cultural background to coffee, or expanding your social circle.
Right.
Being mindful of whose voices you amplify, even on social media.
It's about being an ally,
Yeah,
not just saying it, but doing it.
exactly. And it goes beyond just those individual actions,
Yeah.
The article also highlights speaking out against injustice.
Right.
Whether it's calling out a joke or challenging bias, using your voice can make a difference.
Yes, silence is complicity in a way. It's about having those uncomfortable conversations, even when it's hard. And I think sometimes the most impactful actions aren't those grand gestures.
Right.
It's those small choices we make every day.
Absolutely.
Consistently striving to do better, be better.
Yeah. It's about recognizing that dismantling prejudice, it's a collective effort. We each have a role to play.
We do. One thing that struck me about this is, while the article focuses on upper caste Indians, I think this whole ironic prejudice concept, it's so much broader.
Oh, for sure. It's universal.
Yeah.
It can happen anytime someone benefits from a system of privilege, race, class, gender, whatever. You see that potential for a disconnect.
Totally. Think about it, someone who's a huge advocate for gender equality at work, but then upholds traditional gender roles at home.
Oh, yeah.
Or, someone who supports racial justice, but stays silent on economic inequality.
Absolutely. It's those blind spots, those inconsistencies. That can be so frustrating.
Yeah.
But recognizing them, that's the first step.
Yeah. It's about those conversations and being willing to grow.
Because ultimately, a more just world, it requires all of us to examine our beliefs, our behaviors, challenge those deep-seated systems that perpetuate this inequality, working together to create a world where everyone can thrive, no matter their background.
And this article, it gives us this powerful framework to understand these dynamics.
It does.
It encourages us to move beyond blame and judgment, to focus on empathy, reflection, action.
It reminds us that we all have a role to play in building a more just world. And that message, it goes way beyond just the caste system.
It really does.
It's a call to action for all of us to be agents of change. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, explore this irony of prejudice, the dangers of perpetuating these systems, the importance of education, looking inward and taking action. But the conversation doesn't end here.
Yeah.
It's really just the beginning.
Yeah. It's about taking these insights and using them in our lives, communities, having those conversations, challenging ourselves. And as we wrap up, one final thought. Remember that quote, "The world is a mirror. It reflects back what you are." Let's strive to reflect compassion, justice, respect for the dignity of every human being. Thanks for joining us.
So we've explored this idea, of ironic prejudice, where those who benefit from a system of privilege might find themselves, facing bias in another context. We've talked about education, introspection, action. But how do we actually put these ideas into practice? What can we do as individuals to challenge our own biases and contribute to a more just world?
Right. It's not about having all the answers right away.
Right.
It's about engaging in that process, learning and unlearning,
Yeah,
being open to those, well, uncomfortable conversations with ourselves and with other people.
it's true. It's easy to get overwhelmed and feel like I don't even know where to start.
Oh, yeah,
But even small steps, it can make a difference, right?
absolutely. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being willing to try, to mess up and learn from those mistakes. Okay, so where can we begin? The article, The Irony of Prejudice, it gives us this roadmap. And it starts with education.
Hmm.
We've touched on this, but it's worth repeating, I think. You can't dismantle something you don't understand.
Exactly. So take the time to learn about different forms of prejudice. Read
Right.
those books, watch documentaries, listen to podcasts, engage with those different perspectives, and make an effort to understand the historical and systemic factors, the things that contribute to inequality.
And it's ongoing, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's always more to learn, more to uncover. Stay curious and challenge those assumptions you have.
And once you have a better understanding,
Yeah.
then it's time to turn inward.
Right.
That's where the introspection comes in. Look at your own beliefs, behaviors, identify those blind spots, acknowledge where you might have bias.
We all have biases, right?
Yeah,
It's part of being human,
yeah.
but we got to be aware of them and work to, unlearn them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Start paying attention to your thoughts, reactions. When you make those assumptions about people,
Yeah.
based on their race, gender, religion,
Right.
any social category,
Right.
challenge those. Where did that come from? Is
Uh.
it fact or is it stereotype?
Right. Right.
And have those hard conversations with yourself. It's not about beating yourself up,
Right.
but be honest and hold yourself accountable.
It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Exactly.
This introspection. It's about constantly trying to be more self-aware and align your actions with your values.
Okay, so once you've done that internal work, it's time to look outward. And that's where embracing inclusivity comes in.
Right. So it's about actively seeking out those diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
Building relationships with people who are different from you. Creating spaces where everyone feels welcome and valued.
So think about those social circles, your work, your community involvement. Are those spaces truly inclusive? Are you making that effort to connect with people who are different?
And it's more than just representation. It's creating a culture of belonging where everyone feels safe to be themselves, to share their perspective.
Right, it's listening to and amplifying those marginalized voices.
Yeah.
It's speaking up when you see injustice, using your privilege to advocate for others.
And advocacy, it doesn't have to be this grand thing.
No, it doesn't.
Often it's those small choices, choosing to be kind, respectful, being an ally.
So as we wrap up this dive into the irony of prejudice, I think the takeaway is, well, we all have a responsibility to challenge prejudice,
Yeah,
both in ourselves and in the world.
we do.
It's not about blame. It's about recognizing, we're all part of this system and we all have a part to play in creating a more just world.
Right. So let's keep learning, keep reflecting, and keep acting.
Yeah.
Challenge our own biases, embrace inclusivity, and work together to build a world where, well, everyone has a chance to thrive.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's inspired you to keep exploring these issues and to be a force for positive change in your own life and your community.